I was in a much better position to purchase a home at that time rather than rent. But long story short, I didn't have a plan. I bought that house in 2000. By 2004, 2005, I was able to sell it for 400,000. And I purchased it for 121, 131. So I took all of the proceeds from that house, right? Paid off my student loans, right? Because that was the first thing that was worrying me the most. And the rest of it, I went and bought another house. And then I started investing in real estate from that point on.
Welcome to the Share the Wealth Show, where minority professionals can learn to escape the racial wealth gap and catapult themselves into abundance. Your host, Nicole Pendergrass, grew her net worth from being negative to multiple six figures. Join her on her investigative mission to expose secret strategies of the wealthy so we can all have the tools needed to build the life and legacy we were created to possess. Now it's time for the show.
Man, oh man, oh man. You guys are in for such a treat. This is definitely going to be a two-part episode, so be prepared. But we talked about so much with Lee Johnson today, and this man is such a wealth of information. He has so much knowledge. We have not even scratched the surface as to what he knows about and the information that he's gathered and garnered over the years. So we discussed how he highly leveraged his W-2. He actually is still working it, but I'm sure he probably doesn't really need to, but he's leveraging it very strategically. He leveraged it to get into real estate investing and to have the capital. He's using his retirement accounts in a strategic manner as well, not your typical retirement account. So you need to listen in to see what type of structure he has for his retirement accounts so that he can invest with them and just write checks to himself, right? Interested in that? You need to listen in and hear how he's doing that. But I'll tell a little bit about his background here. He has been investing in real estate since 2005 through multifamily, private lending, rehabbing residential properties. He started with watching, I believe he said Carlton Sheets, VHSs. he said he was going to age himself, and learning how to do that, but then doing nothing with that information until like years later after he actually finished college. I won't go into the story here because you guys need to listen and hear how his story is very relatable. He grew up in the projects of Jersey City, and he was able to use his W-2 and his job that let him travel around and be able to save so much money from his W-2 and then use that to actually be his investment capital. And then he started vetting all the people that he was working with, making sure he was only working strategically with people who he liked and trusted. He would stay within that circle of trust. So it comes to a point where he really talks about your network and your network being trustworthy and how to build that and how to make sure that you are vetting the information that you get from the people in your network or from investment opportunities that you're looking to get into. There's ways that you can double check what operators are telling you. Lee goes through, oh my goodness, so much information. He calls himself the paper millionaire. I don't know if that's going to be the title of this episode yet, but I guess we'll see. But he's a paper millionaire because he just has a lot of his millionaire asset is in his properties and his assets, but he doesn't need that for the cash flow right now. And he has a plan for how to keep, he calls it swap until you drop, swapping one property for another and for another until he passes away. And he has a plan for how he's going to leave that to his heirs. I'm telling you, this episode covers the entire gamut of what we like to talk about here at the show when it comes to how to grow your wealth, how to start from very little, how to be a smart investor, and how to strategically leave it for your heirs and create generational legacy after the fact. So in any case, there's so much in this episode. I don't want you to miss it. Another quick piece about his bio, his current portfolio spans multiple markets across the country, over 2,800 units, valued at about $334 million. He is both now an active and passive investor, I mentioned that, but he is a driving force for embodying creative use of alternative investment strategies and building generational wealth and empowering people to achieve wealth. So he's here to help, and he's here to teach people how to do it and how to be a wise, smart investor. So this is not an episode that you can afford to miss out on. And he leaves his phone number at the end. Please contact this man. Reach out to him. He leaves his phone number. Please don't fast forward either. Listen to the whole episode. Get the phone number the right way. All right? I'll see you later in a second. Listen, I know you've been digging in, studying everything you can, listening to all the podcasts, reading all the books, even going to meetups. You basically have a degree from YouTube University, right? But you still feel stuck. You don't know how to actually implement what you've learned. You're nervous about taking the next step. And with the economy like it is, especially with a downturn looming, you're even thinking maybe you should just wait it out. I know you've heard that real estate makes more millionaires than any other asset class, but you know what else? More millionaires are made in a downturn than any other market cycle. So now is the perfect time to jump in and really get started. I'm super bullish on growing my portfolio this year, and I don't want you to miss out. So I've decided to start the Microfamily Investing Accelerator. This is a mentorship program where I personally guide you through my 5 proprietary pillars so you can learn how to buy your first commercial multifamily property and scale while not biting off more than you can chew by focusing on 5 to 20 units. That's what I call microfamily. And so you can also get hands-on guidance from an experienced microfamily investor, me, who's been right where you are, nervous about how to start. And so you can also create the cash flow needed to give you freedom and options to build the abundant life that you were destined to live. So I'll be limiting the first cohort to 5 students because they'll have direct access to me and I will be heavily invested in their success. The first group is going to start in January. So if you're ready to grab 2023 by the horns, schedule a free discovery call with me today. The link is in the show notes. Let's hit the ground running in 2023. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. And now let's get back to the show. Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Share the Wealth Show. This is the show where we talk about strategies to grow, protect, and build minority wealth. And today we have with us Mr. Lee Johnson, who is, I don't know how to describe him. I feel like he's a man of mystery. Like, I've met Lee from he's like always on every Zoom meetup that I've been on, and I've been there just even in just attendance, and he's always there. And he's always just like, so most of the time kind of just quiet and laid back in the background, and then he'll talk and drop bombs of knowledge, and I'm like, yo, then who is this man? He's done everything, and I've just been fascinated, and so I'm glad that we have actually surprisingly serendipitously met in person, and now I was able to grab him for the show and to share all his wonderful knowledge with you guys. So Lee, hi, how are you? Thank you for joining us today, and let's get ready to share some knowledge.
Thank you, Nicole, for having me. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. I guess I don't know how much of our pre-conversation I should share, but we literally were just talking about dental hygiene and making sure our teeth.
Yeah, I don't think you want to share. Might gross a couple people out.
Talking about teeth and dentist appointments.
Yeah.
But everyone, make sure you're brushing and flossing. When you get older, you end up getting a lot of suspicious spots if you aren't extra diligent. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
You don't want to have to go and see a periodontist for sure.
No. Okay. So I went over your bio and whatever we're going to talk about at the beginning. So what about your journey? What's the background of Mystery Man Lee? Like, how did you start? How did you get into, what did you start with? Did you always know you were going to be in real estate? What are you doing outside of real estate? Like, just give me the breakdown. How'd you get to where you are?
Well, I'm going to age myself just a little bit, but I got started in real estate by uh, staying up late at night. My grandmother would always tell me to turn off the TV, and I was watching Carlton Sheets, and I had a little bit of money, and I found a way so that I could order some VHS tapes. You remember VHS tapes? And I put those VH tapes in, and I listened to Carlton Sheets tell me that I would be able to buy real estate for no money down. I didn't believe him, and I didn't have enough of a strategy. Plus, you got to have confidence, because no money down means not any of your money down, right? No money down just means that you have to use some other person's money to do that. But I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, and most people who live in Jersey City, New Jersey, they don't have a lot of money, right? They're not going to be able to say, "Hey, kid, I trust you. I'm going to, loan you $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in order for you to go and purchase a property." So, that was high school. I was watching Soul Food and all of the other movies out there, and I said, "Let me go to college," because my aunt was at college, and my aunt is only 1 year older than me. And I went up to her school, and there was a party going on. And I had a great time at that party. And I said to myself, I can do college like this, watching School Days and all of those movies like that. I was like, this college thing could work for me. So I went to college, got my degree in computer science from Fairleigh Dickinson University. But long story short, I didn't have a path, right? I didn't have a path. I was making a little bit of money, and I thought at that point in time, since, I was making way more money than my parents, because I was this IT tech guy and I'm a programmer, blah, 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 that I was good enough, right? But you know what happens 6 months after graduation? 6 months after graduation, I learned that Sally Mae was going to be integral part of my life, and it scared the hell out of me. So I said, "Hey, I got to go and find me another job." So at that point in time, I was working for Quest Diagnostics in Teterboro, New Jersey, and I found me another job that allowed for me to travel on the road. And for about 3, 4 years, I was on the road traveling, and in doing so, I got rid of my house, I got rid of my car. I had no expenses. So that allowed me to save. And I was over there in Seattle, Washington, and I was at this long-term hotel, but it was like an apartment, like a studio apartment, but it was a long-term hotel. And one of the ladies at the desk, front desk, mind you, she told me, because I had been there for 18 months, she said, "Hey, I just bought a condo." I was like, "Damn, how were you able to buy a condo?" And she was like, "You know what? I've been working with this guy over here at Edward Jones, and he helped me to save up enough so that I would be able to buy my first property." So I said, "Damn." I went over here and I saw this man at Edward Jones, and I said to the dude, "Do what you did for her, for me." And at that point in time, I might have been making, $75,000, $80,000. But the kicker was I was on per diem. I didn't have a car payment. I didn't have to pay for my own food, right? So I was just piling money into the bank. And when I met with this guy at Edward Jones, mind you, he sucked at stock picking, right? He only had me invest in whatever was in Seattle, Expedia, Microsoft, Starbucks, right? But he told me one important thing, and this is like a part of the journey that I tell everyone. He told me, with your income, this was before when you could deduct your mortgage interest, right? You can still do it today if you itemize, right? But it doesn't really make sense. But he told me, with your income, you need to buy a house. So after that project was over, they moved me into Virginia. And I thought, my aunt and her husband are Navy, and they live in Virginia Beach. And my cousin was down there, 2-bedroom apartment in a gated community. That's about $500, $600 a month. But no, I moved up to Northern Virginia, which is right outside of DC, and a one bedroom apartment was going to cost me $1,100. So I remember the advice, the only bit of good advice that the Edward Jones guy gave me. And I went and purchased the house because I was looking for apartments. And I think my mortgage at that time was like 1136. And they wanted me to pay for my one bedroom apartment. It would have been 1100. And if I wanted a two bedroom, it was going to be like 1300. So I was in a much better position to purchase a home at that time rather than rent. But long story short, I didn't have a plan. I bought that house in 2000. By 2004, 2005, I was able to sell it for 400,000. And I purchased it for 121, 131. So I took all of the proceeds from that house, right? Paid off my student loans, right? Because that was the first thing that was wearing me the most. And the rest of it, I went and bought another house. And then I started investing in real estate from that point on. And that's what started my journey into real estate, from Carlton Sheets to graduating to buying that first house. If it wasn't for that first house, Nicole, I don't think many of the things that I've been able to accomplish would have been accessible at that point in time. And, as you go through your journey, you don't know which of those turns that you made were the ones that actually made the most sense. But I can tell you without, any hesitancy, that I believe that what made it work for me at that point in time was purchasing that first house, because that gave me liquidity in order to be able to go and move into other investment vehicles. And, today, having invested in 25 different multifamily syndications, right? That's what I do. And it started out when I got back from Singapore, because I lived in South Africa for 2 years, where I met my wife, and she's from Botswana. And I did another 18 or so months in Singapore, right? So I had 2 stints where I was on per diem. When I came back in 2014, I was literally flush with cash. And, since she's not American, we had to go through the whole immigration thing, get her legal, her documents, her green card, and everything like that. So it was a struggle for her. So I said to myself, let me, rather than have her, because she's educated, right? Rather than have her go and do the 9 to 5, let's focus on buying a business or building a business. So we explored 7-Eleven, we explored daycares, we explored many different franchises, and we landed on, let's do some fix and flips. So in 2014, we did our first flip. We took a boot camp class. And in that boot camp class, I walked up to the instructor and I said to him, I'm going to do a deal within the first 30 days. So within next month, I'm doing a deal. And we did our first deal within 14 days. Now, it wasn't the perfect deal. At the end of it, I stressed myself out, but I walked away from the table with about $43,000, $45,000. And from there, we just started doing flips, right? But flips don't make sense if you make more than $150,000, right? Because flips are taxed at personal income, right? And since I was already in the high tax bracket, to pile more more income on top of that means that literally I was writing 5 or 6 digit checks to Uncle Sam.
What?
No bueno, no bueno, right? You don't want to do that. But at that same time, I read a book, Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. And from that book, he told me that the government, the tax code is about 6,000 pages. And 200 pages of the tax code is dedicated to telling you how the government is going to tax you. The rest of the 5,800 is about how you could minimize your taxes. In addition to that, the book talks about how if you do the things that the government is wanting you to do, right? They'll give you incentives that will save you money and allow you to keep more of what you have earned. So there's two things that the government really wants you to do if you're an entrepreneur. The first thing they want you to do is create jobs, right? If you create jobs, you're going to be in a very good situation. Number two is they want you to build housing, create housing for people. And if you are in a position where you're able to create housing for people, you are in an excellent position. And then you follow that up with reading Cash Flow Quadrant, right? Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad series. You are all set because now you understand how income is generated and which ones are taxed at different rates, right? And if you go with the E, you have earned income that's taxed. At this point in time, it can go up to 37%, right? But if you are in the I for capital gains is taxed at 0, 15, or 20%, depending upon how long you are holding on to the asset. So if I know all of this now, do I want to continue focused on building my career so that I can make 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, and be taxed at 37, 38, 39%? Or do I want to start spending more of my time focusing on what I can do to increase my earning potential using passive vehicles? And that's when I found multifamily syndication and Gene Tolbridge is a whole different business, right? And that helped me to understand, oh, this is how big deals get done, right? Someone put together the deal, but they were able to raise capital from other people in order to make this whole thing work. And when I figured that out, oh, it was off to the races from there. It was off to the races from there.
Wow, that was so much information. That was a great story. Okay, there's so many places that I could go with that, but it makes so much sense. You gave so much strategy just within that story of people who, if you are high earners, the type of real estate projects that you should be looking for that are beneficial. And even just the point that doesn't make sense to flip if you are a high income earner, because you're just adding to your earned income. I mean, it's like, I know that, but just saying it in that way, it just kind of like, duh, like it makes so much sense, right? Okay. So really quick, because I don't want to spend most of the time on rehabs and flips, because that's not,
Yeah.
I mean, if someone wants to do rehab flip, but this is not what this call is about. But how did you went to a meetup? You said it was a meetup or a mentorship program that you joined about doing the flips?
It was a meetup, but nowadays a lot of meetups, they try to sell you something, right?
Yeah.
It's not really where you just come and hang out and network and learn.
Yeah.
But at that meetup there was a boot camp, and it was a
Okay.
weekend, Saturday and Sunday boot camp class. And what I liked about that boot camp class was that everything that I needed in order to be successful was in that room. They had a contractor, they had a wholesaler, they had a hard money person. All I had to do was stay within that circle of trust and I would be successful. And 1 flip, 2 flip, 5 flip, 10 flips. All of it was in that room and we were able to be successful at that point in time. Right. But, all of those, because, yeah, you're not going to be in a position where you work your way up to 25 syndications, right, overnight. Right. But all of those were stepping stones that allowed me to get to the point to where I am today. So in my system, I tell people or my mentees per se, I tell them, leverage your job. Right? You got your receipt, leverage your job, but use that as a vehicle to raise the capital that is going to be necessary for you to make other investments. And if the 401k, we didn't talk about how people are no longer staying at a job for 10, 15 years, right? I tell people, take the stranded 401ks that you have, and if you trust yourself and you put it into a great system, you'll be able to accelerate your earning potential. Like a lot of people, when they quit a job, Nicole, they'll take that for, well, a lot of people just leave it where it is.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. I say for those who do move it, they typically move it to wherever their current 401k provider is for the new employer. I say take that money and set up a EQRP, which is a enhanced qualified retirement plan, or you can set up something called a self-directed IRA. I say take that money, right? And if you trust yourself, right, like what I have done is I have something called a checkbook IRA, or it's an IRA LLC. So my LLC, I'm in control of. The other day, I needed to wire $70,000, right? I didn't have to go to my custodian and say, oh, can you approve this? I was in control of it. So I sent $70,000 for one of my investments down, and I just went to the bank. But some people, if they might be, getting in trouble with money and whatever have you, they might not trust themselves enough to say, oh, I won't dip into it, because literally you just write a check, right? And some people are better off when they have a custodian who looks at the investment and approves it. But I've been doing this now for about 20 years. So I'm comfortable knowing that one, that I don't need to touch those monies, but two, right, I know how to do my due diligence on an investment to make sure that it's going to return the capital. And as you very well know, you've been investing in this game for a while. From 2019 all the way up to 2023, 2022, it's been an amazing opportunity to be in multifamily. Amazing, especially if you were investing in the Sun Belt states, Texas, Florida, the Carolinas. You literally only had to have a heartbeat in order to be able to put together a deal and exit with some type of 1.8, 2.0 equity multiple on a deal.
Okay, I have to pause you because you keep dropping so much stuff, and I don't want to stop you because I want to hear the next thing you're going to say. But okay, the main thing I want to get to from your beginning stages, because I want to prep people who maybe have not started, to how do they get to your level. So that beginning stage, even though all of those people were in the same room with you, what gave you the mindset and confidence just to say, oh, I have all the people here, let me just go do it? Like, how did you get enough information from one boot camp class to be able to actually execute an entire flip? You know what I mean? And then like getting to the point where now you feel like you trust yourself enough because you've been doing it so long, you have the skills to analyze deals. But how does someone get to that point? What if they have an old IRA that they want to transfer, or 401 or whatever, they want to transfer that, roll that over into a checkbook or even a custodial account, but let's say they want to do checkbooks so they have control. How do they get that confidence and the mindset and the knowledge to know that they can trust themselves, or like to just execute? Because you executed very quickly, you know what I mean? And a lot of people will be in that room and still not take that as a cue to execute.
You're right. And one of the things was, I am a vociferous reader. Like if I have a little bit of downtime, right, rather than, scrolling through my social media or whatever have you, I am in my Kindle reading a book, right? Learning, because there was a certain point in time where I didn't have access to wealth, right? And I just thought that hard work was going to be the vehicle that would get me to the places that I needed to be. I had to learn, right? Got my undergraduate degree, got my master's degree, that, hey, the more money I make, the more money Uncle Sam is going to take. And there's a good balance off of that. But one of the things that I also had to learn was that the higher you are on the ladder, the harder it is when you fall. So those were some of the things that were competing with me. But I had confidence because, I've already run, multi-million dollar projects. When I was in South Africa, I had 160 people who were reporting to me, and that went into tens of millions of dollars. But, in South Africa, it's rands, right? So I had that confidence that if I educate myself, right, I would be able to execute on my knowledge, right? And also, remember, I said inside of that room, there was a circle of trust, right? I had built out relationships with everyone in that room to make sure that I was going to be successful. There was one individual, I'm not going to name names because he might be one day watching this podcast, but he went outside of the circle and lost a tremendous amount of money because he went with his own contractor. The property was about an hour and a half drive from him. He would drive down, like take out of his day, drive down to the property. No one would be working on the property. And the worst thing about that is that when you're doing these flips, you have a high interest loan, and 10% interest on $300,000, $400,000. That's a lot of money that you have to pay per month, right? So what I said my first time out, and even still today, when I work with people, I work with people who I trust, right? Literally, I know it's cliche to say that that person has to be like family to you, but literally, when you sign that paper, you're in a marriage. You're in a marriage for 5 years. So it was that real estate boot camp that actually started me going. And, after you do a flip, you get $40,000. You got to hold on to about at least 50% of it because Uncle Sam is going to come for you. But what we did is we were flipping all of these times. And I was saying to myself, after 2 years of, writing 5-digit text to Uncle Sam, I said, nah, this, I ain't doing this for this. No way am I doing this for this. And what I did at that point in time is I read Gene Tobridge's book, because what I was going to try to do, I live in a tier one city, a tier one MSA, metropolitan statistical area. And to purchase a property in DC proper was going to be about $150,000 to $200,000 a door. This is now 2017, 2018. Today is probably about $250,000 to $350,000 a door, right? So I said to myself, purchasing a property where I live wasn't going to make sense. So I said, well, how can I purchase property where I am not? And that was the vehicle that opened up the door to syndications and, doing Google searches and things of that sort. The first couple of times I didn't execute, right? I didn't execute because literally someone was saying, hey, we want you to send us $50,000 to $75,000, and I don't know them from Adam. So what did I do? I went back to my circle of trust, and inside of my circle of trust, there were a group that were doing multifamily syndications, right? And you're not going to believe this, but that property, we did it 2017, 2018, no, maybe 2018. That property just sold, right? 5 years of delivering steady cash flow distributions on a quarterly mark, right? 8% preferred. I'm going to have a 2x multiple on that one. Let me break down that story just a little bit. So this was the first investment that I was using my self-directed IRA, because a long time ago, I had created a self-directed IRA, but I didn't do anything with it. I didn't know how to do anything with it, right? So I put it back into a 401k, or at that point in time, a traditional IRA, right? But this time I had checkbook access. So circle of trust, I met, her name is Christine. I met Christine at a Panera Bread. I had a check for $100,000. And literally, I gave Christine that check 5 times and I took it back 6 times because I was nervous to give someone $100,000 check, right? But circle of trust again, she knew my circle, I knew her circle. We gave them $100,000 check. And since that point in time, that $100,000 was peeling off, how much is it on? Yeah, $4,000 a year. We've been collecting on that. And now we're about to get the principal back. And I'm figuring that it's going to be about a 2x multiple. So that $100,000 is transformed into $200,000, plus the cash flows that I've been reaping from that point in time. Now I have a bigger problem is that now I need to put $200,000 to work. Whereas, there aren't a lot of deals out here nowadays that are making sense.
Yeah.
So it's an iterative process. You work your way up into bigger deals. And the only thing that is changing is the amount of zeros that are in the deal.
And what I want to clarify for some people who may not get from what you were saying is that I'm assuming that deal that you're talking about is you were a limited partner investor in that deal.
Yes.
Okay. And so whatever the first 5 or 6 deals you did with Christine.
First 20 deals, I was on the LP side, right?
Yeah.
I took money and I invested it, invested it. And what I did is I worked with a number of different operators so that I can understand who's good and who's not so good. Who do I want to continue to invest with and who I would never invest with ever again. And of course, there's some people that worked out very, very well. And there are now other people who I would never touch with a 10-foot pole. So one of the things that I would stress to your viewers is the fact that they need to put together a great system for doing their due diligence, right? Like underwriting, even if you're not leading a deal, someone is going to tell you, they're going to send you an offer and memorandum, or OM as we call it, and they're going to say pie in the sky. Guess what? We're going to be able to, hit so many returns, right? Hit so many benchmarks by you investing with us. How do you know? If you don't know how to do and carry out your own due diligence. So you have to figure out how it is that you're going to carry out your own due diligence, from getting on a plane or driving to wherever the property is and looking at the asset, going to the Office of Economic Development, going to the Chamber of Commerce, visiting them and looking and asking whether or not if the information that you found inside of the OM really has life. If you don't do that, the old saying in the hood was that a fool and his money is soon separated, right? So those are the things that I would stress to anybody who's getting into this game is learn how to do your due diligence, right? Because there's a lot of people out there who are just looking to, part you from your money, and they're not going to be ethical and keep to their promises, right? So I handed that check over 5 times, pulled it back 6, right? But I built up the stomach, the gut, to say that this was possible for us to do, and this is how we could do it. And I handed over that check. And from there, probably within this week, I believe she sent out the email last week that said by this week, the final number should be known, and probably before the end of the year. I'm hoping that the distribution doesn't happen to next year because of the whole tax situation. But also, since this is I.R.A. money, it doesn't really matter to that much.
Okay. Yeah, well, since you did have I.R.A. money, but you have invested with non-I.R.A. money since then, correct? So my question too is, and just to let people know, you've gotten all this cash flow from distributions and equity multiples and all of that. But at the end of the day, have any of your properties you've been able to write off a loss even though you had cash flow? Because
Yes.
you get into the multifamily for the tax benefits, right? So you wouldn't get as much tax, but you had that extra income. So how was that offset?
Great question, Nicole. Great question. The thing about it is when you're investing as an LP, right? You're collecting cash flow distributions, but when you're working with, value add opportunities, so those are older assets that you're going to do some type of renovation plan on them, you plow a lot of money into it, right? And then you couple that with a cost segregation, which accelerates the depreciation schedule, right? And what that property is going to generate is losses, although you receive cash flow distributions from collecting the rents and other amenities. The problem that you have is if you aren't a designated real estate professional, and the big and you have material participation, those losses just accrue. So you can't write those off against active income. Guess what? I was pissed when I found that out the first time. Pissed. Literally, I was going from tax advisor to tax advisor, hoping that one of them would tell me exactly what I wanted to hear. They didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. But eventually I went through my stages of grief and I came to the fact of saying, there's going to be capital gains at some point in time. And last year, there were 3 or 4 properties that sold, right? We had capital gains, but we were able to wipe out those capital gains, right? By leveraging those accrued losses from the many years before. So at the end of the day, it was a win-win. I really don't get into people advertising and saying, oh, get the cost segregation and do 100% depreciation this year. Okay. Unless you are a real estate professional with material participation, it's just going to accrue. Right. And since this is a 5-year hold, what does 100% depreciation do to help me out this year? In my experience, nada. Right? Somebody, I am not a tax professional by far, but from my personal experience, and that's what I do, Nicole, is I get a certain amount of energy by helping people to understand that, hey, when you do a fix and a flip, it's not like what you see on HGTV, right? It's a lot of stress, right? But you can make some money if you do it right. And the same exact thing is what I'm helping people to understand about multifamily investing. I have searched high, low, in between, and I haven't found a better opportunity where one can invest money and grow wealth, right? Without having to get their hands dirty. And this is how I evangelize to people is that, yeah, you worked hard for your money. Now is the time to go and put it to work. And it should be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And those are the systems that I share with my mentees to say, hey, this is how I did it. And if you want to be in a position where I am, right, about to walk away from my 9 to 5, then these are the things that you can do for yourself. And it's tested by me, of course, but it makes sense. It just makes sense for me. And I'm happy to share and evangelize with as many people who don't know, who come from backgrounds like I come from, single parent with, 5 siblings. We were 6 in total, right? So if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? Because we didn't have a silver spoon in our mouth. And I always tell people, much less if we had a spoon in our mouth, it was a plastic spoon and we stole it from McDonald's. So that's what I tell people. And if I can do it, I think that they can do it. They just need to they have to work on their trust system. And once they have worked on their trust system, they will understand that, hey, if you leverage the trust and you follow the system, you can reach the goal just the same. Because a lot of people out there, they're trading 30 to 40, right? Literally, you get out of college, they tell you if you work 40 years, by the time you graduate when you're 20, you work 40 years, you'll be 60, 59 and a half, you can start accessing your 401ks, right? Why not trade in 7 to 10 so that you don't have to work 30 to 40? And if you follow the system, literally you get back your entire day to do as you please, right? Because at that point in time, you will have built up your net worth to the point where if it yields a certain return per year, that yield can cover your annual expenses. And literally 24 hours out of the day is yours to do as you please.
Hey guys, don't kill me, but I'm going to have to cut this episode short. This is too juicy, and we need to do this in a part 2. So stay tuned for the next episode that airs, and you can hear the rest of our conversation.
Did you love this episode of Share the Wealth Show? Be sure to connect with Nicole by following her on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. If you picked up any of the gems that were dropped by today's guest, make sure you not only put them in your bag, but if you know of someone who would benefit from this information, don't keep it to yourself. Share the wealth and make sure to leave us a rating and review. We'll see you for next week's episode. Subscribe so you'll be notified.